entity said,
The living entity said,
Kasmin, in which
Janmani, birth,
me, all those,
Mayam,
to me, Pitara,
fathers,
Matara, mothers, Avaman, word, Karmabi, by the results of fruitive action, Ramya Manasya, who am wandering, Devatiriyak, of the demigods and the lower animals, Nri, and of the human being, and of the human species, Yonishu, in the wombs. Translation: by the mystic power of Narada Muni, the living entity re-entered his dead body for a short time and spoke in reply to Narada Muni's request. He said, according to the results of my fruitful activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two people as my parents? Purport. Here is made clear that the living being enters a material body that is like a machine created by the five gross elements of material nature: earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the three subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and ego. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, there are two separate identities called the inferior and superior natures, which both belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the results of the living entity's fruitful actions, he is forced to enter the material elements in different types of bodies. This time the living entity was supposed to have been the son of Maharaj Chitraketu and Queen Kumajaduti, because according to the laws of nature, he had entered a body made by the king and queen. Actually, however, he was not their son. The living entity is the son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because he wants to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Lord gives him a chance to enter various bodies. The living entity has no true relationship with the material body he gets from his material father and mother. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but he is allowed to go through different bodies. The body created by the so-called father and mother actually has nothing to do with its so-called creators. Therefore, the living entity flatly denied that Maharaj Chitraketu and his wife were his father and mother. Jiva uvacha kasmin janmanyami mayam taro mataro vaman karma via brahmyamana shama deva tiryan yonishu. By the mystic power of Narada Muni, the living entity re-entered his dead body for a short time and spoke in reply to Narada Muni's request. He said, according to the results of my fruitful activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two people as my parents? Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Kristaya Punjali Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami's Namne Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Prachayani Yadishesu Shunyavadi Pastyachati Satayani Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kalpasubhyascha Patitanamyo Vaisnayo Maha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So here is one of these verses where we hear the simple bare fact of material life, which is Brahmanda, Brahmita, Kona, Bhagavan, Jiva, that the jivas, the living beings, are wandering from one life to another in various species of life. This is what is going on. We live for, we are eternal beings who take one birth. For a short while we exist in that body as a human being, as an animal, as a plant, as a demigod, for a short while, and then we die, and we get completely covered over, forgot all about who we were in that particular lifetime, and takes birth in another lifetime. Constantly, and all these innumerable living beings, millions and billions and trillions of living beings, we constantly mixed, sometimes in this form, sometimes in that form. This is simply what goes. Nothing else goes on here, really. We think that there are so many important, big things going on, but actually, this is just what goes on, which includes everyone we see around here. We're all simply being, for a short while, existing in a particular body, in a particular circumstance, and then it's over and to a new body, and that's over and then to a new body. Ugly reality of material life. There's nothing romantic about it. People, there are different spiritualists like that who have a romantic idea about reincarnation, that it's, it is evolution, it's progress, it's advancement. We simply go up to higher and higher levels of perfection, going from, like some, I think the Steinism also, this, this famous Martinus, of course you heard him. So they only have this idea of progress, that we can never go back. Once we are humans, we can never go down to become animals again, something lower. So it's just moving onwards to higher and higher levels of perfection. And basically what we see here is even like our lila. It's something very adventurous to be in a material body, or something very educational. It's something that we have chosen on our own to be in this particular form. Just like we go to some place, vacation. You look at a catalog and say, I would like to go there, and then you buy a ticket and you go there. You join in that particular, beach with palm trees or wherever you go, and many spiritualists, they have this idea about reincarnation. It's like that. It's something that happens according to our free will, and it's happiness and it's enjoyment and it's development and so on. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's a very cruel reality. Of course, going from reality, so-called reality, going from the belief that there's nothing after death, and then realizing actually there is life after death. That's of course, that's definitely a much more inspiring way of looking at life, that there is something after death. So we, going from that stage, one does become inspired by becoming aware that there actually is reincarnation. I remember I was very inspired when I read that there was life after death and understood it. It's true, actually there is life after death. Of course it's, because this idea that there's nothing is such a bleak. This is really, this is really uninspiring. So going from that's also generally. I mean, when we preach to people, especially on the street, we try to get people to take books and like that. And then I try to inspire them. And actually, it's fantastic that there's reincarnation. There's nothing to be afraid of. You cannot die. Which is also, in one sense, how Bhagavad Gita starts, isn't that it? Arjuna is lamenting. Krishna says there's no reason to lament. There's nothing. Don't fear. Don't lament. There's nothing to. So we can, in one sense, just by reincarnation, we can transfer that understanding to people. There's nothing to be afraid of. Do you have experienced that? Is that a good thing to tell people?
Definitely.
Yeah. Your personal experience is like that. People they get inspired by that. So
many people believe in reincarnation.
Actually, yeah.
Many people they become very inspired if you tell them that hey, if you like to sleep a lot, maybe next life you can just become a bear or something like that.
And then,
wow, that's amazing.
Oh, what would you like to be in the next life? I'd like to be a butterfly that can fly from flower to flower. So you can meet all kinds of ideas like that. So of course that's very cute and like that. Better, blind uncle is better than no uncle. But really, as devotees, in order to progress as devotees, we have to understand actual reality. It's a very horrible, gloomy condition to be in as eternal souls, to be caught in the samsara, in the wheel of birth and death. It is. We should always be aware of that, and therefore, every so often, these verses appear in the Bhagavatam, describing this ugly reality of reincarnation. We should always be aware that that's one symptom of actually being in knowledge. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita. Always be aware of the miseries of birth and death, old age and disease. Prabhupada writes in the purport that unless one has a very pessimistic outlook on materialistic life, always being aware of the miseries of birth and death, then one will have no impetus to advance in spiritual life. This is actually what is urging us on. When we forget that, then we sink down. Okay, it's okay. I'm happy, or at least I'm secure and I'm eating. Not even particularly happy, but it's just we tend sometimes to fall down into some kind of I think that's at least our situation, just in a kind of dull state of existence where we just go on like vegetables or animals that are just being fed every day and don't even think just as long as we are eating, then we are happy. I guess that state is anamoya. It must be the anamoya states. There are living beings are active on, or are realizing supreme at different stages. And anamoya, there the supreme is realized by eating. One is we dependent. We cannot. We need food and supplies, and when one. But in anamoya, that's the whole purpose of existence. When one has that, one becomes just happy, and modern people are very much often functioning on that way. They have they're just eating, and then there's nothing else is pushing. And even as devotees, we can fall into that. If we fall into that, we just satisfied by security, comfortable situation, and we don't, even when that comfortable situation is there, we do not end up being urged on. This is actually we do not advance in spiritual life like that. It's not. That is. To advance in spiritual life, one definitely has to go beyond that stage. Krishna arranges for his devotees comfortable lives. It's generally it's like that. It's Krishna wants his devotees to be in a comfortable position for serving. You know, it's the idea is that we should be able to serve with all energy and enthusiasm without having to worry about the basic needs of life. Krishna arranges this for devotees, but when we're neophyte devotees, then we, you know, there's a danger we simply become complacent and satisfied that we have a very comfortable situation. Then Krishna can arrange other situations also, and it might have to do that. But no, but really he shouldn't have to do that. And if he has to do that all the time, actually, it will not. One will not last in spiritual life. One has to go at one's own power and inspiration. That's an important point. We can, I mean, Krishna will help us, and devotees will help us, but they will help us to the point where we can actually help ourselves, stand on our own legs, moved by our own energy and power. That's is that English? Help to self-help, hjælp til selvhjælp.
That's the easy translation, I think.
Yeah. That God helps those who help themselves. That one has to be, in the beginning as a devotee, one gets a lot of support from Krishna, from devotees like that. But one has to come to the point where one is simply working on one's own energy. One doesn't need to be held up constantly by someone else. And as soon as one is not held up, then immediately it's like a dull, one just collapses, splat. You know, it's can go on for a little while, but at one point, Krishna will give up, devotees will give up, because everything has to happen by our own free will, ultimately. And so one has to come. We have to come to the point where we simply are, being constantly motivated by, getting out of the material world and going back home to Godhead, and not forgetting that at any point. And but if we forget that, if we forget the ugly reality of materialistic life, we have no impetus to advance in spiritual life. Therefore, we have to actually always be conscious of death, and even sometimes be so conditioned, think that is, that's so pessimistic, and that is but that's first of all, it's not pessimistic. It's realistic, and also it's not. We have always not. It's not grim. It's not horrible, but we should still be aware of it. It's coming, and if we do not utilize our time properly to prepare ourselves for death, aiming for death, well, then it will be a new birth in the material body. One becomes philosophical by being aware of birth and death. There was I don't know if you were there, in Satyananda Swami at Bavnholm, he gave once a seminar about philosophy, how to become philosophical. Were you there? And he showed a slideshow to begin with. It was a 15-minute slideshow to make you philosophical.
Feel what?
To make you philosophical, to make us all philosophical. Then he showed a slideshow, 15 minutes.
About death, huh?
Yeah, and what was the slideshow? It was pictures of dead people. Pictures taken of someone who had just died. There were deaths, of old people having died, lying in their bed, dead, of children, of people in accidents being dead, and and all kinds of people, young, old, men, women, black, white, and on, dead. And so his point was that this is what makes us philosophical. And then he quoted, I don't know that quote, but that was he quoted one or two philosophers. Was it even Gandhi? And something about that. Death is what makes you think about life, makes you think about philosophy or something like that. So, but that's And it's completely right, it's just taken out of Prabhupada's purport that when we are aware of birth and death, miseries from birth and death, then we have impetus to advance in spiritual life. And if we do not have that, if you fall down into kind of an ignorant state where we just trot along and not aware, then we will not advance. That's it's a simple point. Simple point, but it's needed. We always have to be aware of that this is actually the only thing that we are aiming for. We can also get entangled, involved with so much. We are cultivating so much knowledge, and we are sophisticated. We have big PhDs and have read so many books and can know so many slokas and so on and so on. And that's a danger of learning. Learning gives one's, fills one with false designations and makes one proud. I know so much and like that. It's all in one's head. It's actually it's no one else is really aware of it or impressed of it. But in one's head, one thinks that one has so much. When you go down the street, there are thousands and thousands of people who don't even know that I exist like that. But in my head, I am very distinct like that. So that's another kind of illusion, or another kind of madness. And one can cultivate knowledge, but never at one point forget actually what is it all about. And life is very, very short. We are soon going to die, and we should not identify ourselves, not be attached to this particular circumstance we're in. Be attached to the circumstance for Krishna's service. That's that's the other thing. We're not Mayavadis. We are innocent. We attached to Krishna, and when we're in this particular situation, then we are, very attached to act as Krishna wants us to act in this particular situation. But otherwise, one should not be attached to being either here or there, or with these particular people, or not with these particular people. We should be prepared here, like Chittiketu was in a particular situation, now it's over. The Jiva was in a particular situation, now it is over. And the Jiva here, of course, he has, he's, I guess Nadamuni is speaking through him, and he probably also has some realization at this moment. He just died. He was just a child in illusion, and just being absorbed in the mood of a child, and then he's suddenly pulled out, and he sees this life, and apparently he can see many of his previous lifetimes, and he understands actually that this is it was just one of many situations I was in. These parents, they were, they think they're my mother and father, but in which lifetime were they my mother and father? I have so many mothers and so many fathers. This Jiva has definitely a very clear idea of reality, of this part of reality. And so does also Chittiketu Maharaj, and his wife and all the queens will also learn from this, and they will actually turn towards actual spiritual life, which we'll hear more about. It's Maharaj Chittiketu is of course an amazing person, that he's able to, after this experience, simply to turn around, and then he simply goes to become a great devotee of Lord Sankashan. I guess we get a chance to speak more about Sankashan later on in this chapter here. You stop here? Any questions?
Maybe you have an angle on this, also a similar question to yesterday. With the soul, how, because we know the soul is still in the spiritual world. Is the soul conscious, the spiritual world conscious of, I think, like an expansion of the soul being here in the material world? Or is it so extremely short experience that like it doesn't really exist?
Are you?
Yeah.
I say, are you?
I don't know.
Are you conscious right now of your existence in the spiritual world?
No.
So I think it's no, we're not conscious. Oh, we conscious, our consciousness is right here.
But I mean the soul in the spiritual world.
Yeah. But
Is that me conscious of my condition by
no. You're conscious here. You're not conscious. I mean, you're not conscious in other place and not conscious of it. That's not possible. You understand?
not.
You cannot be unconscious of being conscious. Yeah.
Unconsciously conscious.
Yeah, not, and that's, you can, yeah. You can,
Yeah, that's what I don't understand, because we hear about people who have dual realities, or dual existences.
yeah.
So they are not really conscious of the other existence.
How do you know? And as far as I understand, they know they are conscious of. If you know, the jiva who is like a yogi who is expanding in 8 forms, he's conscious of them all at the same time.
But I'm thinking, for instance, Advaita Chinese Mahavishnu.
And conscious of it.
He knows he is Mahavishnu in the form.
Definitely.
That's not my about my. I don't know.
But I mean, of course, Vishnu Tattva, they can also choose to be somewhat forgetful for the sake of Leela. I was saying we don't have that power. I mean, we can, you know, in a certain level we can expand, and also Krishna, he can, you know, have us 2 places at the same time. But I mean, but the thing is, you know, like as I understand our situation is in the spiritual world, just like when we are entering a dream. We are here, we awake, then we fall asleep, and then our consciousness is in the dream. We fully conscious of that, and our awakened state, we're not conscious of it at the same time. I mean, I think that's, as I understood it, very simple, you know, in the spiritual world. And as I've heard it, it's something like, you know, you're there, and you kind of, and then some people hear that example, something like that, goes so quickly. But that can be millions of lifetimes in the material world. So, in that sense, but strictly speaking, you're not, when you are there in the dream state of material existence, no, then your consciousness is not there, then you are, you know, you're not conscious of your existence in the spiritual world. And
vice versa?
And vice versa, except you can, I mean, like of a dream, you can, in your waking state, you can be conscious of that you had a dream. You can even maybe remember details of the dream, and you can just remember you had a nice dream, or you had a horrible dream and you don't want to think about it. So in the spiritual world, material life would be like you may not remember all the details or even think about details, that was a horrible experience.
Oh yeah, afterwards, well, I'm not thinking during.
During?
I know afterwards.
Yeah, but during, no, you cannot.